Hello there, my name's Neil David and I'm the host of Eurograps Express, the podcast exclusively dedicated to the wrestling of Europe. If it's wrestling and it happens in Europe and it's good, we talk about it. Whether it's Rev Pro, Progress, WXW, Passion Pro, Pro Wrestling Chaos, Pro Wrestling North, we don't care, we talk about them all. If it's good and it's exciting, I want to share it with you. We're on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Check us out on the feed. Check us out on Twitter at EuroGrapsEXP. And join us for chat about European wrestling and a little bit of chat about cheese. Hopefully see you there.
Hello, do you like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Are you a Shin Nihon freak? If so, check out the Super J-Cast with Joel and Damon on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
And even if you fucking hate New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen to the Super J-Cast anyway. Not just for our great show reviews, analysis, and pastrami sandwiches, but there's also usually some dick jokes somewhere in the obligatory opening 30 minutes of absolute nonsense we chat about every single week. That's the Super J-Cast for all the best talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, crisps, and pornography.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome back to another episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Hungee here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. I am your host, Tyler Fornes, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Fred Morin, who held down the fort while I was attending my sister-in-law's wedding last week. Fred, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's nice to have you back from Arizona. Were you in Yuma?
No, I was in... So we flew into Phoenix, and then we drove down to Tucson, which is about... depending on where you're going to Tucson, it's between 90 minutes and 2 hours. And we stayed at an Airbnb that cost like $1 million. It was really nice. And then my sister-in-law got married on St. Patrick's Day. My mother-in-law fed me tequila shots all night. We had fun, but I'm just glad to be home because I took a red eye back and I will never do that again. It was awful. I did not get any iota of sleep until about 8:30 in the morning, and then I got like an hour and a half, and I took 2-hour-long naps later in the day. I had to work, so it was very fun.
That is rough. Well, we got to start off with some big news before we get into the rest of the show, but this just broke from Fightful. The headline is Snitsky, Mae Young loved when I sucked on her toes. Asked my wife. I'm a professional foot connoisseur.
Why is Fightful embarrassing?
I think this is... I mean, this is why I can't be like a news director anywhere, like without any kind of filter, because I would think this stuff is very funny. Because I'm a terrible person.
But Fightful is trying to be like a professional news organization.
I'm not entirely sure you can say that when they have headlines. Spitsky. Mae Young loved when I sucked on her toes.
You can't be both. Listen, I do aggregation for a living. This is an abomination. Like, I understand you got to pay the bills, but you have to have a line. You're talking about
they got a line
fetish.
Right here, man.
Yeah, you didn't just cross the line. You jumped into Lake Michigan. Like, this is awful. Like,
my favorite part of this story, such as it is that this is from a Snitsky appearance on the Cheap Heat podcast. Maybe we can get Snitsky on here. And he just said about Mae Young, who's been dead for 9 years now, and can't like refute this or anything, that she absolutely loved him sucking on her toes in a WrestleMania 22 sketch and wanted him to keep going after the director yelled cut. Like, just dead ass saying that in public. Aren't you glad to be back from Arizona?
I was. God, it's embarrassing. Like, how is anybody supposed to take wrestling media seriously when this is
know.
what it is?
This seems like pretty big news to me. Maybe I'm off.
No, it's you know it's big news. Kenny Omega facing off against El Hijo del Vikingo. We'll talk about that later because I have a lot of thoughts, and Fred, I know you do too. But let's get through the news because I really want to talk about that.
Sure.
Probably the biggest headline outside of that abomination from Fightful is you can hear Odie in the background excited that I'm
Yeah, the
home.
Hungee dog's going wild.
Oh, yeah. He is borking at the suitcase that has not been unpacked yet. Let's talk about the house show, Fred. And
All right.
it seemed like it was a big success. The optically, it looked like a full house. WrestleTix had a number of 3,200 tickets distributed. But I
Not sold,
really
but
thought
distributed.
I would assume about 90% of that is sold because that's kind of
That's about the percentage, give or take.
That's kind of what distribution we've seen from other AEW shows.
Maybe 85.
There's papering in every show. They give away tickets for everything. And I'm not just talking wrestling. I'm talking concerts. There's a lot of paper tickets at concerts too.
Oh, yeah. You work
NFL
with the local
games.
media, local radio stations, all that stuff.
Baseball games, hockey games, basketball games, they all have a certain amount of papering. Wrestling's so different. So if you get 85 to 90% paid house, that's pretty damn good. That's kind of the area you're shooting for because of how much papering you end up doing for promotions, wrestlers, etc. I'm sure Moxley had quite a few people there because it's close to his hometown, Cincinnati. But I thought it was really interesting on top of everything. They made it matter right away. How did they do that? They mentioned it a couple times on Dynamite. And they even set up a match on Dynamite from the House Rules show where Tony Khan said, after House Rules, the Butcher and the Blade and Kip Sabian attacked Orange Cassidy. And I don't even remember who his partner was. Oh, Darby Allin. And they end up challenging him to a 6-man tag match with Sting, which was, I thought, anytime you get to see Sting wrestle is cool. And we're going to talk about that because that was fun. But when you look at all those things, Fred, it ends up mattering because you make it matter. Like when WWF used to have a random title change at a house show. I believe Kevin Nash beat Bob Backlund at an MSG house show for the WWF title. And then you had multiple like intercontinental title changes at those shows. They made them matter. Obviously, the business is different than it was 30 years ago. But if you make them matter, fans will care. And guess what? Now that they've seen stuff happen at a house show, the next House Rules in Calgary in July, guess what? It's probably going to sell more tickets. They also have a much bigger building being at the Saddle Dome. It all matters. And AEW's trying, and that is a big thing with these house shows.
Yeah, and I think it worked pretty well. I did see, I should have dug into this, but I completely forgot to. I did see that there was a report or speculation or something going around that AEW's future house shows are going to be, or at least one of them is a sold show, which I think is smart. I guess it's very curious just how it will look going forward. If we do one every 4 months or whatever, I think the next one's in June, so that'd be 3, obviously, because that's how math works. That's not going to be a big impact upon AEW's business either way. And you can just kind of treat them as just like little one-off special events. I didn't really think that we'd be getting anything like a 3-show a week schedule or 3 non-televised shows a week schedule. I think there's probably a market for them to do slightly more. If you want to go monthly or even like 2 a month, I think that wouldn't be out of the realm of reasonableness. But right now it just seems like just a very on the odd occasion kind of deal.
Yeah, it's probably going to end up being on occasion. I'm actually scrolling through WrestleTix right now. One thing I found interesting, earlier it ended up being slightly below 4,000 tickets for AEW Dynamite last night. They only distributed 3,600 tickets from a 4,200 ticket setup. Now, for context, last time they were there was last June 8th, 2022. They sold 4,400 tickets almost. That's a pretty big disparity, Fred.
Yeah, that's 800, I think. So that would be math is hard. Probably like a 13% drop, give or take. Doing that completely off my head, top of my head. 18%. Okay. Yeah, that's not great. I think AEW has definitely chilled over the past year. Let's not get it wrong, but I also think they're still doing fine. They're not as hot as they once were, but they're still a solid number 2 promotion and doing just fine. And honestly, when they were knocking on the door of WWE's ratings last year, I think that said a lot more about WWE's shortcomings than it did about AEW's standing. I keep saying the wrong one to the wrong spot. So I don't think it's cooler. That's fine. It's also their second time in a market. I think that's also to be expected to an extent, drop off there. I don't know. It's just kind of fine. It's fine. It's not great. It's not a disaster.
Yeah, it exists, and I think that's what's important here. I've been trying to find, because I thought I saw numbers from WrestleTix on the Saddle Dome, which is what we were talking about with the next House Rules show. I'm not finding anything, which I'm a little bit surprised by, because it is. I mean, you're talking the Saddle Dome for hockey seats 15,000, I think.
Yeah, I've got the Ticketmaster link here, but I'm not gonna be able to I mean, it looks like that there's still.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to get too far into the weeds about it, but I think it's objectively good that when they're doing these house show gimmicks, and they're keeping them spaced out enough. I think that's important too, because one thing that was really tough with WWE, especially when they're doing house shows, they were so oversaturated, and you could argue they're still oversaturating the market, because not only do you have 7 hours of first run TV, you have at least one premium live event a month, sometimes 2. And it's really difficult, because you have all these different things. And when you have so much to watch and keep up with a company, I follow and cover the NFL. Watching all 16 games is a challenge. You can't physically watch all 16. I have 3 TVs in my basement. I will realistically keep tabs on 7 games a Sunday, and then your Monday night game and Thursday night game. So realistically, I'm watching 9 games a week. There's still 7 more. There just isn't enough time in the day. So when you're talking about how WWE would operate their business for so long while they were doing house show loops, you're asking fans to commit to 7 hours of TV a week, and along with that, you're doing house shows. That's a lot. And that's one of the reasons why house shows started dwindling. They weren't being loaded up like you were loading up Raw and SmackDown. And then X plus Y equals Z. And now they pretty much ruined their own market, per se, when it came to house shows. They just had to evolve their business model. It took them a little while to do that. Now, with AEW, one house show every 3 months, and they sold some shows, which I think is brilliant, because now they have a guarantee and they're going into new markets, and they can use that guarantee to continue to investigate and collect data on the house show market with a limited amount of loss, because there's a lot less risk when somebody's paying you for the show rather than going to an arena and being like, I hope I sell 5,000 tickets. It's, quite frankly, a really smart idea to start with, and you can continue to grow and evolve from there. But the most important thing is they made it matter to the fan base right away by talking about it on the show and having a match stem from house rules. Now fans are going to be more interested to go see some of these shows, at least in theory.
Yeah, and I do think it's could be a benefit to them business wise if they keep going for the lower level markets. Not every market, Chicago or New York, as I can personally attest to where I live. But if you hit those smaller markets with the house shows, I think you can get a decent little house when you draw them in. When you go to, like, I don't know, pick any third tier city here, Tempe, Arizona, or you know, Baton Rouge, or these other places that are, at least in my mind, smaller cities because they don't have a major league sports team. They have minor league ones, and that's kind of how my broken brain classifies, cities in the United States. But I think it also kind of works out too.
Here's an idea for you, because you mentioned minor league baseball, and one of the things that Jeff Jarrett did with Global Force Wrestling was he had sold shows at minor league baseball stadiums.
Sure did.
Could that be in the cards here?
I think that would not be the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Do like a little mini tour of some ballparks over the summer. I think that could work out pretty well for him. Since you brought it up, I have to inform you about my local independent baseball league team, because it was a victim of the Major League Baseball cutting a bunch of minor league teams from their affiliations. For a long time, we had the Lexington Legends here, and we still do, except they changed their name. And they are now the Counterclocks, Tyler, because both in baseball and in American horse racing, you run counterclockwise. It is a terrible name.
What the fuck, man?
They had great branding with the Legends too, with like mustaches, because their mascot was Big L, who had like a giant mustache, and they would sell a bunch of like hats with just mustaches on them. And now we got like the Counterclocks.
How stupid is that? Oh, I am now mad online, Fred. I am mad online. I have my dog eating the broken wheel on my big suitcase, which now I'm gonna have to buy another suitcase. Yeah, we're having a good day. Let's keep going. You talked about this last week, about how good Stu Grayson was on last week's Dynamite, and yes, he was, and he was. The match with Moxley was a little disjointed, but it ended up being pretty good.
I still liked it. I thought it was a good match. Yeah.
I just thought their chemistry initially was off, and then
I don't think they were on the same page initially, but it wasn't like awful. Like, it wasn't like you could drive a truck through it. It just looked like they were kind of like, okay, what are we doing next? At a couple points.
Yeah. But he has officially re-signed with AEW. He got a really nice pop in Winnipeg, which I thought was nice. Obviously, I asked in the Discord, and our local Canadian with Voice of Wrestling is Griffin, and he informed us that he is from Quebec. So that was really nice to see him get a nice pop out in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
And I'm glad Grayson is doing something better than just working like local indies, because I watched one of those local indies there. He was in like a tag team match main event back a couple months ago in the Quebec area. And my God, he just outclassed everyone else in that ring by like a huge margin. But yeah, nice to have Stu back. He's a great worker, and he can fit right in as like a mid-card kind of guy who can, I think he's going to play a decent role in this little Blackpool Combat Club or Heels storyline. And I don't know, I'm happy to have him back.
Yeah, I'm happy to have him back too. And you know what I really want? I want a Super Smash Brothers tag run. Because when they came into the company, there was the initial Dark Order gimmick, and it was freaking weird, and they missed with it. But Dark Order's kind of become something, and now it's also died out. I'm not really sure what the end game is, but I hope it ends up
position right now, isn't it?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. But I think an idea of a Super Smash Brothers tag team run sounds fun. Uno's working really hard. We know Stu Grayson's a great worker.
And Uno's a great
that could
promo.
Kick ass.
Like, Uno is legit at least a very good promo, not great. And I think he did a really good job building to his Moxley match, and I think he performed great in that too. Just was like the guy who fires up for a bit, then bleeds everywhere and dies.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, you can't. Yeah, I don't want you chewing that. Never mind. I'm trying to get him to chew something else, and it's not working so well.
This podcast is focused extensively on mouths today.
Yeah, it really is. And my throat's not doing well, so we'll see how this goes. Danhausen, unfortunately, got hurt at Revolution, which really stinks because I was hoping for a potential Danhausen-Toru Yano match at Forbidden Door because, let's be honest, how great would that be on the pre-show? He tore his pec at Revolution, which means he's out at least 6 months if he has a surgery. If he rehabs it, maybe he could be back for Revolution, but that's not the kind of injury you want to rush somebody back from.
On the plus side, he can still walk around and do Danhausen stuff as like a guy on the outside. So I don't think we're going to like completely lose him for half a year, but it is going to reduce our Danhausening. It's unfortunate. He was doing really well for himself. I think he acquitted himself pretty well in that match. And hopefully he's able to rehab properly and come back 100%.
Absolutely. Next piece of news, Goldberg is a free agent, Fred, and Tony Khan said, that's interesting to hear. How would you feel about Goldberg in AEW, and what would you do to maximize his impact?
That's a real interesting one, isn't it? I think you've got to use them in very short bursts. I don't think you can have them sticking around for a long time. I certainly want to have them in the championship picture. But I do think like having them come in for, a single match could work very well in AEW. Just a matter of lining them up against the right guy. Obviously, you don't want to have it be a strong heel. Unfortunately, I think away from MJF right now, there's not very many strong heels to put them opposite. So, short of possibly just killing the Guns and sending them back to somewhere else, foreshadowing there for what I'm going to talk about later. I don't know where he fits in. It's a very interesting question where he would fit in. You could always partner him up with Sting for a short-term thing. Obviously there's a strong connection there. Or even have him kill Jeff Jarrett just as a one-off. I don't know. I think you could do something with him if you can get him in the right slot. But it's just a matter of finding that slot for him.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a difficult one. But I do think that you could utilize Goldberg. And the first idea I had, which is probably the first idea everybody had, Goldberg versus Wardlow. You obviously have the connection with Wardlow. Their entrances were very similar, especially when Wardlow was at his peak, like the kind of Goldberg entrance. We're following him through Gorilla, and then he comes out with the pyro and the fire, and you can make that. But I also think from a work rate perspective, it makes the most sense. Wardlow has not fully developed the ability to have consistent, cohesive matches that kind of string together. He is much better right now at Spot Fest. Who better to have a power Spot Fest match than the king of power Spot Fest and Goldberg?
I would argue that it probably worked better if they tagged together. I think that might work better. I think there's an obvious comparison between the two. I don't think that a Wardlow Goldberg match would be good unless it was like just 6 minutes of meaty men slapping meat, which I would not be opposed to. But they're a bit away from. I mean, I don't know. It just feels weird with Wardlow since he's a babyface that's kind of been wronged right now. Now, although you bring up Wardlow, I do think Wardlow promising a mystery partner for a tag match against QT and either Hobbs, or if you want Aaron Solo to be murdered to death here, that'd be fine. That would be a good third match on a pay-per-view kind of deal. Have Goldberg come in as Wardlow's secret partner, and or not secret because you'd want to sell stuff with his name, but as his air quote surprise partner. That could work decently, I think. That might be something right there.
Yeah, I think it could work. And it would be very interesting to see kind of how that ends up working out if it were to happen. But I also think we're a little too ambitious right now with that. Here's something interesting and kind of different from what we've been sensing. Christopher Daniels, who works in the office for AEW, said in an interview with Wrestling Inc. that the AEW AAA relationship is in a good position. It certainly hasn't felt that way in recent months. AEW wrestlers have not really been going to AAA to wrestle. and you haven't seen a talent exchange outside of Vikingo this past week. What's your take on that? Are we reading too much into the fact that they were having quote unquote issues, or is this something that maybe Christopher Daniels is just doing PR speak?
It's an interesting thing. I think it's definitely a positive they got Vikingo in to work this match. Now the question is, was that work through AAA, or was that because of AEW possibly making a deal to have Vikingo join them on a primary basis? That's hard to say at this point in time. I don't think there's any real indication either way that we know. But I'd like to see things going forward, just like what that is, if if AEW talent is sent to AAA shows, and how that progresses. I think Tony Khan is very open to the idea of working with other promotions, but I also think, just to call a spade, that I think when he wants to work with them, it's very much a how does this benefit me thing, and this is primarily with like smaller promotions. I'm excluding New Japan from this. And it's less a how can I help you kind of situation. I think with Impact, he very much benefited from having their world championship and sending Kenny Omega there for a few times just to help further a storyline he was doing as the belt collector. But I don't think that Impact got too much out of that other than the bump from the Omega appearances, which you could say is a pretty big deal. AAA benefited from having the Bucks and Omega come in, of course, but there's also been a bunch of issues with getting AEW talent to actually show up. I think the last big show had like 3 different members of the AEW roster scheduled, none of whom showed up. Now, is that an AEW issue, a talent issue, or a AAA issue? It's hard to say because AAA
were any of them visa issues?
I think there was at least one. Issues. I think there's at least one visa issue. But I think there was more if they had started taking care of it earlier, they would have been able to get in the country kind of visa issue, not a Jamie Hayter has to renew her visa issue, if that makes sense. I don't know. AAA is kind of notoriously not the smoothest machine, when it comes to doing things in general. They very much don't seem to have a concerted plan for what they're doing. And so I think they're kind of unreliable in terms of just promoting themselves, never mind what AEW brings to it or doesn't. So I don't know. I feel like I've given you a very rambly answer of nothing. But I feel like I do that a lot sometimes. I don't know. It's a complicated situation, I think.
Congratulations, Fred. You are now 5 full select. $5, please. Now, we're going to actually transition because Fightful Select just came out with a report.
A real report. Not the one I was goofing on.
It's kind of real and it's kind of not.
It's not nothing.
So AEW All Out's going to be staying in Chicago, but they're having discussions about having All Out at United Center.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they have sold out United Center the 2 times that they've ran it previously, one of them being Forbidden Door, the other being the First Dance, which was the quote unquote the debut of CM Punk in All Elite Wrestling. So bring All Out over there. All Out is sold. Because they've been doing those strips, All Out, I don't know if it officially sold out last year, but all the single tickets sold out like immediately because they've been selling Dynamite, Rampage, and All Out as a package. That's great if you live in Chicago. If you're like me and you travel for the show, I don't want all 3. I just want All Out because that's pretty much all I can make.
It's a big ask. It's a big ask for fans to come in on a Wednesday and stick around until Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. When you kind of combine everything, it's like that's a lot. And I think people will be more apt to pay for Rampage and Dynamite at the Now Arena, as kind of the Fightful Select report indicates might be a thing, than actually like pay for all 3, because that can be a lot. Plus, it also may open up the fact that United Center sells 20. You can get, depending on the stage setup, you could put 20,000 people in the United Center if you don't have a stage and you do the old school like MSG setup where you just come out of the corner and they put like a mini video board up and that's it. Like you could probably get 20,000 people in there. Now with a real wrestling setup, you're probably talking 15, 16. That's still a massive improvement over the 10 you were getting at the Now Arena.
Yep.
Plus the arena is really nice. There's more than one entrance, which is a huge draw for people trying to get in. I did not get to go to the Forbidden Door suite, but the suites are a lot nicer too than the Now Arena. This would be a very interesting move for All Elite Wrestling to go to the United Center, to commit to that bigger building. And I think it's a sign of positive returns.
Yeah, and I think that if they could do it, it'd obviously be a boon to them, assuming they can move those extra 5 or 6K tickets, and it's a profitable move too. I can't imagine that, like, let's say that, okay, if there's 5,000 tickets, they're going for, let's be conservative, and say $75 a piece. I don't know, on average. Maybe that's overshooting it. But that would be like what, $375,000 net there. I can't imagine. Would the United Center cost that much more than now to use? I don't know.
I think so. Now, here's why I think so, Fred. The Now Arena is basically like it could be torn down and there wouldn't really be much lost. The Windy City Bulls, I think, is what they're called, the G League team. No, yeah. The G League team.
Yeah, that's the G League team. But I also think aren't the Chicago Sky based out of there too?
I don't think so.
Let me double check. I don't think they're United Center. They're Wintrust Arena. So a third building.
Oh, they play at Wintrust. And Wintrust is where DePaul plays basketball. See, here's the weird thing about the WNBA. I think every franchise is owned by an NBA franchise.
I think I think like 10 out of 12 are.
Yeah, I know the Minnesota Timberwolves and Minnesota Lynx. Obviously, Timberwolves and Lynx come from the same phylum, so that makes sense as far as like their nickname. But there are a lot of other teams, and the Lynx play at Target Center, and so it would have been a natural thing for like yourself. Hey, let's assume they play in United Center because that's where the Bulls play. It makes total sense.
That's not the case. That's not the case though, because I know that.
I know. I was just trying to link the two together.
Sorry, I used to write about the WNBA a little bit, so this is actually
I learned something new today. Yeah. I knew you wrote about women's basketball, but I didn't realize it was specifically the WNBA. Learning new things today about you, Fred. But it'll be interesting to see how they end up kind of doing things. So this is interesting. It says Jamie Hayter missed Dynamite due to visa renewal. That must have been last week, correct?
It was last night.
I thought she was on Dynamite last night. Who came down with Britt Baker to attack?
That was last week, I think. I think you're getting them confused. Last night, the save was Hijo and Willow Nightingale.
Oh, it was. I did watch both episodes yesterday. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. You're getting. How dare you, Tyler?
You know what? I didn't even want to go on.
You come in here with your football knowledge and your wide receivers and your tight ends.
You know what? I'm over you already, Fred. I'm gonna go back on vacation. Make you edit the show again.
All the edits I did last week.
Probably nothing like I do every week. Will Ospreay appears to have injured his shoulder in the New Japan Cup quarterfinal match against Aussie Open's Mark Davis. We do know that he was pulled from WrestleMania weekend and I believe Sakura Genesis, that tour. But there hasn't been anything else concrete. It's been speculated, I believe, by Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the injury is believed to have been somewhat severe.
I'm not sure how severe yet. I do think his being at Forbidden Door is possibly in risk. But we don't have enough information to make any kind of conclusion about that right now. I do know he was replaced on the upcoming Impact New Japan show this coming next week.
Yeah, look, it stinks that we don't get Speedball versus Will Ospreay. We get Speedball versus Hiroshi Tanahashi, which will be fun as hell.
That's a different kind of cool. And I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, 100%. Now, let's get through the news because there's a lot on the show that I want to talk about. Saraya tweeted that she was fined for using the word twat. Gosh, that's tremendous. That's tremendous working right there. Who cares about the word twat?
I know, it's good stuff.
That's just great heel work. Like, we have made fun of Saraya on this podcast. Not necessarily made fun of, but been very critical. That rules.
That was probably the best thing she's done at the company yet, to be honest.
And that is not insulting. That rocks.
No, that's not a diss at all, man. I do have to say, again, when Saraya was on camera last night, and they didn't get a promo, but I forget which announcer said it, but what it was like, Saraya keeps saying this is her house. Again, my wife's go away heat with Saraya continued, and she just looked over at me during the show, and just like rolled her eyes aggressively. Not a fan.
It's good stuff, is what it is. Let's talk ratings. By the time you hear this, the ratings for this week's Dynamite will have come out, but we are recording in the early afternoon beforehand. So last week's Dynamite from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, 852,000 viewers, 0.271849, 11th on the day. Fred, that's bad. 11th?
Yeah, it's not great, but I think there was a lot of basketball going on, wasn't there? I know the tournament had not started properly, but was there like... Was
you had the first 4 games. Yeah, 2 first 4 games. I can't remember who was playing in them.
I can't either. I've barely been paying attention to the tournament this year. It hasn't been helped out by Kentucky losing.
Yay. Boo, Kentucky.
How dare you?
Listen, I'm a Florida fan.
I came by this honest. I have the student loans to prove it. All right. If left to my own devices, I would have been cheering for Marshall like an idiot who would never actually see them in the tournament except for like once a decade. So,
yeah, not great, but a very good Rampage number. But it did have the March Madness lead in. But I think it's important that it started at 12:06 a.m. Eastern time.
Yeah,
it was the number 26 cable original. Still, 474,000 with a March Madness lead in. Now, they usually do a little bit of a post-game gimmick before they go to Rampage. So this wasn't just going from basketball, cut, and then hit Rampage like you see with some NFL games where you cut and then it goes right to the next one. No, this is an impressive number, even with the lead in. That's a lot of viewers for 12:06 Eastern on a Friday night.
Yeah, that's a very good number considering the time slot of like just absolute death. I'm kind of curious. I don't think I remember seeing a like a quarter sheet or anything like that, but I am curious like what the drop off was on that show and just how big of a boost they got from switching over from basketball. But I mean, still, regardless, that is a solid number that they managed to pull off. I do have breaking news for you.
Okay.
Legit, like I'm not goofing on the Fightful Snitsky thing. Apparently on the Observer Radio last night, which I have not listened to yet. I listened to that on Thursday nights with my wife because we bond with Robo Dave. Don't question our relationship. Everything's fine. So apparently Meltzer said that CM Punk is once back in AEW. And that, Tony Khan's going to have to make some kind of decision on that, but that's the entirety of the report. I do think that Meltzer has had like from the CM Punk camp, if not actual CM Punk himself, sources for stories going back to the Brawl Out situation. So I think there is something to this. I don't think it's just Meltzer going off half cocked with a bad source or something. So I don't know. I think that's extremely interesting. I don't have, we obviously don't have any actual news on the situation to go over. But I think CM Punk, that's a really interesting situation, Tyler. Do you bring back CM Punk if you're Tony Khan? I feel like we could talk about this for hours, so we'll try to keep this kind of short, but
I bring him in if it makes sense and my talent is okay with it. I really see no negative drawback from a money drawing perspective There just isn't one. It's the only drawback about bringing in CM Punk back to your company is, what's your talent going to think about it?
Yeah.
Like, how does your talent feel about it? Well, if
And
they're
also
okay
the
with
drama.
it, if they're okay with it, Fred, hell yeah, who cares? Do it. Absolutely. This is one of the biggest no-brainers. But your talent needs to approve it. Your talent needs to be okay with it. And if they're not, you can't do this.
Yeah, unless you make the business decision that Punk's happiness means a lot more than the Elite's happiness and Jericho's happiness. That's complicated calculus right there. What if the Elite are okay with it, but Jericho isn't? What if, vice versa? What if Young Bucks are fine with it, but Omega isn't? I don't know. There's all these different scenarios that could be the case that we don't know because no one's talking about it for the most part. I don't know. Another thing I think to consider is that even before Punk left injured the first time, when he came back, I think we can safely say that the numbers were not what they were during his original pre-first injury run.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, I don't know. Is that something that was going to get hot again, or was that just going to be like normal CM Punk levels of over? And we obviously don't have an answer to that.
I think if you go to the Elite, you go to Jericho, you go to your locker room leaders, whoever they may be outside of those four individuals.
Daniel Garcia,
because
we learned last night.
You know who I would go to? I'd go to Sting.
Yeah,
I would ask Sting. Sting has seen everything.
Oh, God. That guy's so much.
And you ask those guys, hey, listen, Punk wants to come back. I know there's huge money in him coming back. So from a business perspective, it makes sense. From a work rate perspective, Punk can still go. That makes sense. But we have this cloud hanging over our heads because of what happened with Brawl Out, because of how he attacked all of you, because of how he has acted in accordance to everything. Is this worth bringing him back? And if I were to do it, how would you feel about it? Would you be supportive? Would you be okay? You ask those questions.
Yeah.
Depending on those answers, you do it or you don't.
Well, I also think you have to consider that, like, there's no guarantee that this is the winning play either, because CM Punk has his own baggage even outside of that fight. He is a guy who's notorious for holding grudges. Is that going to affect him going forward? He is kind of notorious for, at times being unhappy rather publicly. We definitely saw a lot of that last June. Are you concerned about that returning? So I don't know. It's just a super complicated situation where I don't think there's a very clear answer. It's just you got to play it by your gut and by what you think plays best with your locker room.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think they're going to end up doing it. I really do. Here's the thing, and we know that Vince McMahon we found out he's a sex pest. But as a promoter, one thing that he always did that I think Tony Khan can learn from and become a better promoter because of it is that time heals all wounds. And eventually, if there's money to be made, you figure your shit out, you set it aside, and you all go make that money. He did it with Hulk Hogan. He brought in, obviously he bombed it because it's Vince and he has an ego the size of Jupiter, but they brought in the NWO. The Outsiders and Hogan, and they had the NWO. The creative decisions behind that are different, but he generally brought them in. Bruno Sammartino, Bret Hart, Ultimate Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of examples of him bringing people back and doing business with them because it made sense financially. I think because of the type of businessman Tony Khan is and what businesses he partakes in with professional football, professional soccer, and now wrestling, he will end up being that same kind of promoter where if it makes sense, we're just going to do it and we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, I think you probably can't not take the shot, but I also think there's a chance of there being serious damage done to your company if it doesn't work out, which is kind of the scary side of things. I think that concludes the news for the week.
Yeah, thank goodness. I'm ready to talk about this show. Fred, overall thoughts on Dynamite. What did you think?
If it wasn't for Vikingo Omega, I think this could have gone down, really, depending on how that last half hour would go, as one of the worst Dynamites in history. It was teetering on the edge of disaster. There was some decent stuff on the show, and then some like bad stuff on the show. And I don't know. It's that first 3/4 of it was pretty inessential, and it got bailed out pretty hard by Omega Vikingo, and then the aftermath of that match.
Yeah, that match was incredible, and we're going to get to it. But let's start out with that aforementioned 6-man tag. But before the 6-man tag got started, the Bucks were shown, which I missed because I missed like the first 2 minutes of the show. They were being loaded into an ambulance and transported to the hospital after an apparent attack. It got kind of leaked later on that the attack was believed to be by the Blackpool Combat Club. But what was interesting is Hangman Page accompanied the Bucks in the ambulance. Don Callis got Kenny Omega out of there, trying to keep him focused on tonight's match. Interesting dynamic here. What did you think of this?
I think we're definitely going to see Don Callis try to break up the Elite, and this is like the first real step of that. And I think there's a big old storyline they got planned involving Takeshita as well, with Don Callis showering attention on him. If you watched last Rampage, I think it was, with him greeting him in the Winnipeg airport in a great little bit. Yeah, I thought this. I liked the start of this angle, and I'm curious to see where it goes. I think that all these guys have a great story left to tell, and hopefully they're able to do that. One little note from the segment: did you notice the trailer? That they had a bunch of crap leaned against the trailer over one person's face in particular.
No, because I missed the first 2 minutes.
They apparently, according to screenshots going around of other shots of this truck, apparently had a bunch of like wood and stuff leaning against CM Punk's face on the truck, which was extremely petty.
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. But yeah, this was a decent opening. Some people, I think, didn't care much for the ambulance aspect, and I'm not like hooting and hollering over here over the return of the guy leaves an ambulance, comes back and stole an ambulance to whoop ass thing, but also I didn't have a problem with it. I thought Paige did a good job with it, but that's later down the road. We got a 6-man here with Kip Sabian, the Butcher, and the Blade against Darby, Orange Cassidy, and Sting. And Orange Cassidy came out with the greatest face paint in the history of professional wrestling.
Just an O and a C underneath his eyes, like he needs eye black. Look, this isn't a Daily's Place pandemic taping. Like, that was phenomenal.
I laughed really hard. I enjoyed this match pretty well. It was fun.
I did too. I really enjoyed this match. And one thing that I really enjoyed about this match was Sting. I don't care that this man is 62. He can wrestle competently. I don't think he cares
either, man.
Yeah, he can wrestle competently. And you know what was awesome? He did the Orange Cassidy gimmick.
Yeah, he did. We need Sting in the Canadian tuxedo.
Yes,
at some point in the future. That needs to happen.
Mm-hmm. As you can see, the Hungee dog trying to play with me while we are talking about this show.
We got a run in here.
We always get a run in from either the Hungee dog or the Hungee cat, and today it's the dog. No, Odie, you cannot chew on that. He missed me. He's a 9-month-old French bulldog puppy, so he's a stubborn little bugger, and he loves his dad. He loves me very much, but he usually doesn't bug me during shows, so this is different for us. But I really liked how he did. As I said, he did the Orange Cassidy gimmick. He did the kicks.
The roll away from the splash.
The roll away, it was just beautiful. And then after the kicks, instead of doing like a load up kick, he just does a huge King Kong lariat and's like,
yeah,
you.
He also does great. Like Orange Cassidy style, like chest beating for a little bit. It was very amusing. I thought Sting was the star of this match, obviously, and it was just a lot of fun. You got some short bursts of Darby and Orange getting their cool offense in, and then I thought that in general the heels were fine. Kip Sabian and the Blade are both like squarely in Jag territory for me. I mean, I think the Blade in particular is like solid. And I don't mind seeing the Blade around. Kip Sabian, I think I'm done with him. But the Butcher is still cool as hell. I thought this was like a gentleman's 3 of a match.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I think gentleman's 3 is a good way to put it. The work was competent and fine. But the biggest thing for me was Sting is fun. Please don't retire. Just stay around forever. But
yeah.
Like, I'm very intrigued to see what, like, Darby Allin, because it's tropey, but he looked at that Double or Nothing banner, and I'm a little surprised that they might actually be holding off on this 4-way till Double or Nothing, because I thought this would be a good, like, hey, a placeholder title defense, like, beginning middle of April. We don't have all the
pay-per-views, so we're going to fill some time here, yeah.
But because of MJF's gimmick and how he just doesn't wrestle anymore, it's actually kind of perfect that he's not going to have a title defense until Memorial Day weekend, which I still hate because it's like I hate that shows on Memorial Day weekend because I can almost never watch it live because my wife's birthday's on the 29th. But at that point, it's all semantics. So, this was overall a really fun start to the show. Let's continue on. Afterwards, I didn't even realize this was a match because I had been gone. The Guns take on Top Flight, Dante and Darius Martin for the AEW World Tag Team titles. This match was fine. At the end, you had the Kingdom coming down and beating up on Dante, and then the Guns hit 310 to Yuma, I think is what they call it. It's basically like it's a flapjack with a flatliner. It kind of looks like the big rig, but it's a flatliner instead of a code breaker. Overall, I thought this match was fine, but
it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either.
That was a gentleman's 3 for me. Like
I went the work was order.
The work was inoffensive, and to me, that's what a gentleman's 3 is. It's the work is solid, but a match wasn't good. It was just fine. Like, yeah,
it was a very mediocre match, and like I'm out on the Guns as tag champs. If they could work at all, I think they'd be a good act. But like they it's one thing to be like chicken shit heels, that's fine, sure. But it's another to like do that and then have like very bland matches every time out. They've had the worst match I've seen with Acclaim in a long time, and they've had the worst match I think I've ever seen with Top Flight now, excluding like squashes. So like if they can't step it up in the ring, then like they just need to be shuffled down like significantly. FTR just needs to beat them quick. We need to not prolong this feud, and we just need to move on to something that I'll enjoy.
Speaking of, let's talk about that, because FTR did come out and challenge, and the Guns were very hesitant to accept the challenge. So they're like, okay, well, we'll never challenge for the titles again. No, we're not doing that. And Austin was just being way over the top, being a complete chicken shit. And then, well, what if we don't tag together anymore in AEW? And they still said no. So now the stipulation is they will leave AEW forever if they don't win the tag titles. My question to you is this, twofold. One, if this ends up being a trope, do you like the trope? And two, do you think that this means that FTR is going back to the Fed in WWE? Or do you think that this is, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to swerve everybody, but we're staying in AEW?
Yeah, or I mean, it could mean them going to Ring of Honor, I guess. But I really do think it's just going to be that FTR wins the belts back in the match, and they'll move forward. I don't think this will be a particularly long feud moving forward. I think it's just going to be them building up to the match, FTR winning, and then that's the end of the feud. But that's just my take here. So
I hate this kind of tropey stuff. Maybe it's just because I'm annoyed of how it ended up happening with Jay White. I thought that one kind of stunk, even though it ended up working. If you're leaving the territory, just leave. Don't create these stipulations just because.
I think they're playing off all the speculation, though. I mean, I think it fits into that pretty well. And if they are actually leaving, them losing a loser leaves match, I mean, that's a decades-old precedent, So that'd be fine. And I also think there's a pretty good chance that they're just going to win. And it's just a attempt to play off the speculation. But it's fine. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not going wild for it. I'm not. Again, I'm just not into what the Guns are doing at all. And yeah,
I'm not into the Guns either, so I'm with you. Jade Cargill backstage with Smart Mark Sterling said they had a cease and desist to stop Taya Valkyrie from using Jade's finisher. Layla challenged Taya to a match on Rampage this Saturday, which, interestingly enough, from listener and also Voice of Wrestling contributor South Dakota Jones, he ended up saying in our channel in the Discord, which if you're not in, make sure you go, that Valkyrie was surprisingly over on the Rampage taping right after Dynamite. So that is going to be something.
Yeah,
I was ready to come in here and bury the signing because Valkyrie stinks. But if she's over, maybe it's
still bury her.
It balances out enough. Yeah, that's very fair.
I guess we'll see.
I have no problem burying anybody. But yeah, I think it's going to be a big we'll see. And that's about that's about as good of endorsement as you can give to Taya Valkyrie. This was my favorite thing on the match outside of the main event. FTW champion Hook versus the firm Stokely Hathaway.
Oh my God.
Excalibur said on commentary, Stokely Hathaway looks like a man walking to the gallows. And the
intro, Stokely's entrance was so great all around. I mean, he's not as large as the men he represents, but he has the heart of a lion and the wisdom of an owl. Just so much great stuff here. Hugging Bryce. Says Dr. Simpson did not clear him, of course.
Doc Samson.
Yeah, famously. He also declares he's retiring and has a doctor's note that should get him out of the match, but it's just a receipt from Wingstop that someone has written he's sick on. God, just fantastic. You get the one moment of Stokely fire extinguishing Hook and then looking right at the camera and saying, "I ain't a killer, but don't push me." That's Tupac. God, this was the best thing Stokely's done the entire time he's been in the AEW.
Yeah, great stuff. And then Hook just beat the living piss out of him. Didn't get a table, got a piece of
guardrail.
The guardrail and nice little T-bone suplex onto it. Just beat the living piss out of him. Look, Stokely
took some bumps in this man.
Look, Stokely sold it like $1 million.
Sure
this was a 10 out of 10 pro wrestling segment. The heel got his comeuppance. One of my favorites was all the firm standing in the back watching, and Hook pulls out weapons, and Ethan Page is like, "We didn't train for this." It's a no DQ match.
I wish I could like Page more because he does have these little quips sometimes that are just amazing, and this was one of them. I thought he and Matt Hardy, I think, have actually been very good in the talking portions of this storyline. With Matt Hardy clearly being happy that Stokely's getting killed, and not wanting to, but keeping it together enough to kayfabe his way through it. I mean, I love from Rampage last week where Hardy kept body slamming Stokely, and Ethan Page comes up Matt Hardy goes, "You got to be ready for this. He's the human suplex machine." And Ethan Page pops his head in off screen and goes, "Then why are you body slamming him?" Which just cracked me up. I mean, that stuff has been good. The only match rating I could give this is the rare LOL, which is the second match I've ever given that rating to. The first being Shawn Dean versus MJF last year. Great stuff. No notes.
Yeah. Like just all-time stuff. This, and then it got followed up by a pretty good segment where Adam Cole comes out with a microphone. He's like, "Who's ready for story time with Adam Cole, baby?" Talking about his in-ring return next week. It'll be his first match since Forbidden Door last year, which was June 26th. And then he's talking about it, and he's like, "Oh, everybody's asking me who my opponent is." Danny Garcia's music comes out, and this was awesome. Garcia was like, "I'm the best professional rep." And then he stalls for a second. It's like, "Sports entertainer." Like, this was awesome. I think it'll be a very,
man.
Oh yeah, he's gonna be a megastar. But right now he can lose and it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
that's the nice part.
Fine.
He's getting all these reps. He's over as hell, and you can beat him like a drum. This was great. We're gonna get Adam Cole versus Daniel Garcia next week, presumably the main event leading into the debut episode of AEW All Access. This was great.
Yeah, I thought this was actually the second best thing on the show behind the main event. I thought this was a great promo from Garcia. I think Cole came off very well. They're both really over, and I'm excited for this match.
You should be excited for this match because it's going to be good. G-U-D, good. Let's continue on with the show. Alex Marvez walks into the Elite's locker room, and Omega's upset that he didn't go with the Bucks to the hospital. Callis assures him was the best thing that happened because Omega can now focus on Vikingo, and Omega was kind of torn up about it. I think this is going to continue to be a big storyline, and we got an even bigger payoff later. Did you have any thoughts about this?
I thought it was a good little segment. I think Don Callis is getting to shine here, which is great, and he's a good commentator, like a very good commentator, but he's great at being a slimy manager. And I think that this storyline is going to really play into his strengths.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how this continues to evolve, but we'll talk more about that later. Now, we had the aforementioned Stu Grayson against Jon Moxley. Really weird at first, but it got good at the end before Moxley ended up getting the Avalanche Death Rider and then locking in the Bulldog Choke after the match to spurn the Dark Order coming out and trying to save Grayson. This was fine. This was pretty good.
Yeah, I like this decent. This is like a 3.5 star match to me. Really carried by the post commercial break part, but I thought that there were some flaws with it, but I thought it was still pretty good overall.
Yeah, no complaints here. Renee Paquette was backstage with Ricky Starks, basically issues him an open challenge for Rampage. Be a man or not, I don't give a damn anymore. I don't know where this Juice Starks thing is going, but I think they need to speed it up a little bit and get it more juicy than what it is. And I don't say that trying to be punny. Like you had the attack, you had you had the vignette, and then the Ricky Starks response last week, and now it's just Starks calling him out. Like I get the general concept of the week to week storytelling, but I think they could be doing better.
Yeah, seems like they've yet to really. I mean, they kind of started the feud, but it feels like they've really. He's really yet to properly enter it. I guess I'm not sure. I did enjoy Starks almost dropping an F-bomb, whether that was an intentional fake out or not. That was a funny little moment. Hopefully, we get maybe it'll get going for real on Rampage. I guess we'll see. Because Starks is scheduled to do something, probably a talking segment.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Let's keep going. Speaking of talking segments, this is kind of a perfect transition. Another episode of QTV. And then it would be Powerhouse Hobbs versus Pento El Cero Miedo on Rampage. One, we heard this was a good match from a couple people. Two,
Cool.
What do you think of this TMZ style gimmick? Because this is a straight ripoff of that stupid syndicated
that
TMZ
whole
show.
deal. Look, last week they had a couple good lines. This week I laughed at Aaron Solo proclaiming he hacked into some Observer guy's Twitter account. That was pretty funny. But other than that, I have hated these segments. I think that they just stink. I don't think they're getting Powerhouse Hobbs over. I think they're getting QT Marshall over. And it's not a situation where QT is like transferring the heat over. I don't think. I think it's made Hobbs not the star of the situation, and that sucks because Hobbs is awesome. And QT Marshall, keeping his goons around Powerhouse Hobbs, that'd be fine. Sure, go for it. But I think that the whole parodying TMZ thing feels like 10 years out of date already. And I don't know. I just don't want this on my show. It's not working for me.
Yeah. I thought it was a fun one-off. Now that it's continuing, man, like this is getting annoying. Let's do something here. Like this stinks. This is bad.
Yeah, it's generally not entertaining. Like I said, both segments had little short lines that I enjoyed, but I'm not into the overall vibe of this stuff. So
no. Next up, we had Toni Storm versus Sky Blue, and this wasn't bad. It was fine. I think Sky Blue, this is one of her better performances. I didn't see any botches. I thought she worked pretty well with Toni Storm. Like, I'd say that's probably the biggest takeaway for me here. They gave it 3 1/4. Like, nothing special. Nice little TV match. But to see Sky Blue not really make any mistakes, I thought was nice.
Yeah, I thought Sky looked pretty good in this, but I also was not super into this match. Like, I thought it was bog standard. I went 2 stars on it.
Wow, you hated this.
I mean, 2 is like my average. 2 is average to me. So like, this is just an extremely average match. Nothing wrong with it, but nothing really strong about it either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what was most important was they were going to paint Sky Blue after the match after beating her up, but Hijo and Willow Nightingale ran down, as you mentioned. Jamie Hayter was unable to get into the country due to visa issues, which has kind of been a commonplace in wrestling these days. It's not just an AEW thing, unfortunately.
It's really weird how I don't recall this being an issue like 10 years ago to this extent, where like guys would have to leave the country for a couple weeks to go get their visa renewed and miss stuff. Like, I don't know what happened, if there was some policy change on the federal level that caused this or what, but it seems like an industry-wide thing and very odd.
Maybe it's a post-pandemic thing. That's the only thing I can think of.
That's a possibility, I guess, but it's just, it sucks. I mean, I don't think it's had any real massive implications on the industry. Because I don't think you can, not yet. I don't think you can blame like Pac on this. I think Pac's schedule is just what Pac wants to do. And I guess, if that's what he wants to do, fine. Though I really do wish we got more Pac. As the Hungee cat has had enough of my bullshit. She wants Pac back too, I guess. I that's something I'm kind of curious about, but I've never heard anyone do any like reporting on that
yet. Yeah. We'll end up seeing. Last thing we saw before the main event, Stu Grayson was backstage being tended to by the AEW medical staff, and the Blackpool Combat Club ambushed him with Moxley choking out Stu Grayson. I really wonder where this thing is going, because it was them feuding with Dark Order, and now it looks like that's going to kind of continue in with the Elite. Because of the Hangman Page connection. I really think this could end up being a blood and guts, but right now there's only 3 BCC guys, and how they end up maneuvering with that, I think will be very interesting. All right. Last up, main event, Kenny Omega versus El Hijo del Vikingo. I don't know what you want to say about this match, Fred, other than, listen, I was so annoyed by stupid people like Raj Giri, who just bad faith everything to oblivion, not WWE, and even WWE itself, saying, oh, how can you be making this match? And in a now deleted tweet, it's like, well, you wouldn't shoehorn Okada versus Roman Reigns on 5 days build. No. Like, okay, one, Raj, you're bad faithing and you're a fucking idiot. Two, it's not like there's no story. They've been trying to make this match for years. Mm-hmm. And guess what? They even gave you a nice little 30-second video package on Rampage telling you that they already had a match scheduled for this mega title and they've been trying to get it scheduled. Like, they told you the story. They told you. And it's still not good enough because it wasn't 2 months of video packages before the match happened. No, it's just bad faith bullshit. And I was so mad about it while I was on vacation. I wrote a piece on it. And you know what I said at the end? It rules. Just be happy that you get to see it on free television, because Vikingo is going to do some 1996 Rey Mysterio shit. He's going to get gift to oblivion, and everybody's going to be like, wow, this guy's incredible. So you know what? USA Today's website, For the Win, where they talk about all things pop culture and sports, Christian D'Andrea wrote a nice little piece talking about the debut of Vikingo on AEW. And guess what? Related him to 1996 Rey Mysterio. Gran Akuma, a former professional wrestler. You might know him best from Chikara. Compared him to 1996 Rey Mysterio. This guy's incredible. And you got to see it for free. Why are people mad about this? This was on free television.
There are dorks who have positioned themselves to completely hate anything AEW does. And I'm not saying the promotion is beyond reproach or anything, but I'm talking about the bad faithers. They're the people that are like, this is too complex. I don't understand who Vikingo is. Apparently, those people weren't in the arena because they were going crazy for Vikingo minutes in, let alone by the end of the match. This match was perfect. I mean, this was like the best performance I've seen from Vikingo in his entire career, and I've been following him for a few years now, since he really started to gain prominence in Triple L. The dude is amazing, and he didn't mess up a single thing on this night. Everything was flawless. All his shit looked great. And this match, this is my second favorite match of the year, period. Granted, I haven't seen as much stuff as I should have because I'm behind due to work, but this was just an absolutely amazing match. One of my favorite matches of all time. You could make the argument, in my opinion, that this is the greatest TV match of all time, I think. I thought this was just fantastic. Omega was great, but he made sure that Vikingo looked like $1 million coming out of this, and he sure as hell did.
Yeah. Listen, I gave this match 5 stars. Maybe I just love wrestling too much because I have 6 5-star matches on the year already. 3 of those coming at Revolution. I've
got 6, and that includes 3 scale breakers because I'm one of those weirdos. But
there's nothing wrong with that. This was incredible. I think it might have been better as a non-TV match or a match without commercials because they had the 2 slight commercial breaks where they kind of slowed things down, but this was awesome. You had Vikingo doing Vikingo stuff, like the twisting Poison Rana from the top rope. You had the step up on the middle rope, the 630 senton splash through a table. Like, there's so much great about this. It's hard to truly comprehend everything fantastic. That we saw. You had Vikingo at his best. You had Omega being like the big power heel, just kind of like beating him down. Like, this was phenomenal.
Every single high spot was just like the 630 through the table was, my God. And there was not like much margin for error on that. Maybe the clunkiest thing was when Omega monkey flipped Vikingo on the apron.
It almost felt like that was supposed to be clunky. He kind of gave the illusion he was going to fly through that table.
Yeah, I think they were definitely trying to tease that a little bit, because I thought for sure that was going to be the table bump, and then it was like, oh, he's not getting anywhere near that table.
I knew that Vikingo was going to do one of those step up gimmicks, but
oh yeah, God Almighty,
that was so good.
Imagine just trying to like I said, having to position yourself as a guy that hates everything AEW does, and trying to like legitimately argue this was bad. Actually,
you're a bad person if you do that. This is amazing.
Just what a shitty gimmick to commit yourself to, just like to not just enjoy this great match. I don't know, man.
Yeah, just great. Honestly, great. I hope that this means Vikingo is going to be in AEW more often. Cubs fan at Lucha Blog on Twitter, who is the foremost Lucha expert in the United States of America, hinted that he could be coming back in sooner than we think, which to me says he may be back real quick, and that would be exciting.
Yeah, that would be if we get Vikingo on the regular, that would be perfect. Like I can't think of a better place for him. I think it'd be even better for him than in AAA. I think Vikingo. When I did my top 50 wrestlers of the year for 2022, I ended up with him, I think, at 35th. And that's with pretty limited exposure. Like I didn't watch every single Vikingo match that year. But he was regularly having great matches in 2022. And I think this might have been like his best performance period that I've seen from him. I know I've already said that, but like it was just super impressive.
Yeah, this was great. There really is no other way to put it other than this was legit great, and it's awesome. Wrestling just rules, and enjoy it. And yeah. I'm glad that all those people. I've not been perusing wrestling Twitter to see the reactions from like your WWE bad faithers, but I don't understand how you could see this and do anything other than this was just great.
Yeah, I think that it's been very positively received everywhere. Like on Cage Match, it has like granted, it's Cage Match, just get the people that are super into it first, and then the people come along later that are maybe less into it. That's just how it works regardless of it, but it's at a 9.29 right now, which is pretty fantastic. I'm going to pull up where that stands on the year for the Cage Match ratings, but breaking 9 on that site is a hell of a thing. I will say that much for sure.
Yeah, just great stuff, man.
Yeah, that would put it. All right, so this is just for 2023. The Cage Match, that would put it tied for 5th with Adam Page, Jon Moxley at the pay-per-view.
That's probably about where I have it on my match of the year.
There's a couple ahead of it. I haven't seen Okada Shingo yet, though I know I will love that when I do. I haven't seen the All Japan tag everyone loves, the Miyahara Nomura versus Nomura Aoyagi match yet. But those are the, you got that one. You got the Mox Page that is tied with. You've got Danielson MJF at 2 and Omega Ospreay at 1. And I honestly have this above the Iron Man match.
I don't have this above the Iron Man match. This was incredible, but to me, the Iron Man match had so much more story with great wrestling that it just sets it apart and is on a whole different stratosphere for me.
That's fair. That's 100% fair. I'm not going to begrudge anyone like jostling those two for sure. I just think that this was like seriously one of the best high flying performances I've ever seen from Vikingo, and Omega was just flawless, like making sure it all connected together perfectly. I love this match.
Yeah, it was great. Overall, this is a very up and down Dynamite. But
I got to ask, what do you think about Adam Page stealing the ambulance? Because I saw some specific pushback on that.
Who gives a shit? Like, oh, okay, he stole the ambulance. It's been done in WWE. Whoop-de-doo. I don't care. I don't think it was cool. I don't hate it. It just, look, the guy, like, do you want him rolling up into an Uber saying, "Thanks, John. I appreciate the ride"? Like, it's a little tropey. Who
Give me
cares?
5 stars.
I don't care.
The driver should have been named Dave, and he should have asked him for 5 stars.
That would have been good.
I just thought that. I am a genius. I like this comeback. I think, you could debate if it would have been better if it was just his music hitting. I do think that the surprise of him screeching into the building with the ambulance, I kind of liked it, to be honest. I wasn't opposed to it at all. Again, because it doesn't happen very often. Is it like Monday Night Wars, WWE tropey? Sure, but like, I don't know. I thought it was kind of cool back then. And I thought this was kind of cool here. If they're doing it every week, that's different. I don't know.
To me, I just don't care. It's
Yeah,
fine.
that's fine. Yeah.
If you want to complain about it, just whine into the void. This is the guy, like, it advanced the storyline. He wanted to get back. Whatever. Who cares, man?
I do think we got the greatest from Don Callis, though, in this post-match of being
that was
just
so
a
great.
piece of shit.
Where he's holding on to his arm, like, no. And then
he flops, soccer flops.
That was LeBron James good. That was tremendous. I want to continue to see where this goes. I think Takeshi is going to play a huge role, but man, that rocked.
Yeah. I am fascinated to see where things go from here, just with this storyline. I think I think Don Callis is a really underrated performer. Now, I've heard that, people say that, like, he is like that backstage, which is a separate thing, but I don't care. I mean, that's not what I'm dealing with. I see him on screen, and he's just great at being this complete two-faced eel of a person, and he's really wonderful at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just phenomenal. Just phenomenal. I there's no other way I can phrase it. This was a great way to end Dynamite, and Kenny's just like, he thinks Paige did. And if you remember, I think it was Full Gear where Kenny said he hasn't watched back the match. He doesn't watch things back. He's probably not going to watch this back and realize that Paige was only trying to help. This was very well done, and it fits the motif of the characters. And then you still have that tension between Omega and Paige. This is great. Just great.
And also, I mean, the Young Bucks were in the hospital. Cutler's with them, as was, Michael Nakazawa. So, like, there was no one else from the Elite to, like, straight and, clarify this. So it was just really smart. I think I really admire this aspect of things in AEW when it happens, where you get these, like, very layered storylines with good attention to detail, and that's just very nice.
Absolutely.
I do have a couple things. These are from Dave Meltzer on his on the board for F4W Online that he's posted in the past 24 hours. The clock on this is always messed up, so I'm not entirely sure when they were posted. But these are two things Dave said on there. One, there was a discussion going on about the Punk Moxley storyline. And Dave said, and this is a direct quote, so this is coming from him, quote, "Do you know why they didn't advertise Punk versus Moxley longer and why it had a short build? Because Punk agreed to it, then AEW got a legal letter saying he wasn't down with it and wasn't doing it, and they didn't know if he'd come until Tony put his foot down. There are a lot of nice things I can say about him, and you can absolutely argue his position on Moxley was correct, but you can't argue he willingly did what he was asked in that scenario."
Interesting.
And here's a second one. This is in response to some talk about, I think, the Hangman Page match. This is another direct quote from Dave. Quote, "In fairness to Punk, he was winning that match in Vegas. He didn't pull a power play to win the title." This is, so there's been this kind of rumor going around that Punk had to pull some politics to beat Page, which never really made sense to build to that at the time. It didn't fit in, but people have been kind of pushing that over the past few weeks. Back to the quote. He didn't pull a power play to win the title. Tony wanted the title on him then. I'm not at liberty to say, but his own words regarding that match of Page put in jeopardy the company's first $1 million gate does say something. So those are two, again, just to repeat for the fourth time, because I am not liable for this shit. These are direct quotes from Dave Meltzer, on his message board. And I think that this is the downside of the CM Punk gamble if you bring him back. Assuming there's any level of truth to this. But there's definitely, even ignoring those things, there's the reputation with Punk and his general difficulty to get along with. I don't know, man. Just something to consider.
So let me ask you this. This is interesting because when you look at everything, Fred, the line about the $1 million gate, what was he referring to? Was he referring to Vegas? Was he referring to All Out? I think he was referring to Vegas. How was Page's one promo going to hinder that gate? Like, I failed to see the connective tissue.
It was the 2022 Double or Nothing. It was the $1 million gate. And that,
how was this promo putting that in jeopardy?
Well, hold on. Let me double check just to make sure. That was the Page. Yeah, that was the Page Punk storyline. So the implication, because he did drop that line at the Brawl Out post show, if I recall correctly, Punk said that, and the implication would be that he nearly walked out or refused to do the match or something because of the Adam Page workers' rights promo. And thus they would not have had that $1 million gate.
Oh, I don't think it would have mattered at all. But that's just me.
I mean, if Punk didn't show up, if Punk no showed that, or if Punk like a month ahead of time was like, I'm out, I think that would have really. There's no $1 million gate there. I don't think they would have had that sell out without Punk. Now it would have been a good gate.
Not, but
yeah, I think so. Like it probably would have been, I don't know, 800,000, something like that. But I think that the Punk drama really did cause damage to AEW last year. I think more than I thought it would initially. But I also think that if he had walked out at that point before the title win, I think it really could have done more damage to AEW. But I don't know.
Damn, the one thing I can take from all this is CM Punk is annoying. He's a whiny baby.
Fortunately, he definitely has no track record of that whatsoever.
Oh, none. Nope. Clean as a whistle.
I remember like a year ago or whenever it was on the You've Got to Be Kidding Me podcast where they talked about Punk's short early run in TNA and how he ruffled a whole lot of feathers there before he ended up leaving that promotion.
Yeah, it sounds about right. It sounds like CM Punk. But Fred, that is our show today.
It is.
Yeah, that is it. Next week, let's get the people an updated rendition of our Dynamite Dozen, because I think
that sounds good.
We have some new matches to add to this, and it'll be a nice way to finish off the month of March.
Yep.
Anything else, Fred?
I think that's it. Just to go over it real quick, what's next? We do only have one match announced for Dynamite as of right now, which is Adam Cole and Daniel Garcia, and this week's Rampage, which will be on Saturday at 10 p.m. Because I often forget about these time changes, but it has announced Taya Valkyrie versus Layla Gray, Powerhouse Hobbs versus Penta, Brody King versus Jake Hager, The Acclaim versus The Kingdom, and a Ricky Stark segment of some sort. One quick thought, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because I don't think it's a very important feud, but I think it's entirely too rushed. Like, it feels like way too soon to be doing a, you can't use your finisher when the person being banned from using the finisher has been in the company for not even a week yet. You know,
I'll be honest. I would have had an issue with that, but it's smart Mark Sterling. I don't have an issue with smart Mark Sterling doing it.
Yeah,
that's very like scummy, slimy. Like,
if it's right, if it's perfectly formed, but I don't think that you've got enough investment from the fans where they like associate, the fact that they are both using the same move as their finisher for it to be over. But
that's fair. That's
100%. It's a Jade feud. We know what this is going to be probably.
Yep. All right. Well, that wraps things up. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheRealForno. You can follow Fred on Twitter at Flagrant Wrestling with an R, not a W, like he's Ted Turner. You can follow the show on Twitter at GoodBadHungee. You can email us at hungeepod@gmail.com. You can also ask us any questions you want there or in the Discord. And if we get any, we will answer them. Make sure if you are listening to this on the Voices of Wrestling podcast feed, please subscribe to our own, The Good, the Bad, and the Hungee, to help us grow the show and continue to be one of the most listened to wrestling podcasts in the country of Turkey. We are very proud of that, and we want to keep that reputation up. In the meantime, for Fred, myself, Tyler, have a great day.
Y'all take care.
Cheering at pro wrestling shows in Japan is back, and 2023 is already shaping up to be a big year in the history of pro res. That's why you should listen to the Emerald Flow Show. From the Royal Road to the Green Mat, Paul and Gerard take you into the world of All Japan Pro Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Noah. Not only do we analyze events, but we examine business, who is getting over, what angles are working or not. Occasionally, we take a look at other Japanese promotions like DDT and Zero One. So if you're looking for more coverage of the world of Japanese wrestling, check out the Emerald Flow Show on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, available on all of your favorite podcast apps.
Hola, my name is Ricardo. I am the host of the Lucha Jovers podcast here in the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. We are a Spanish-speaking show dedicated to discussing and analyzing pro wrestling from all across the world. From AEW to CMLL, we talk about American wrestling, Japanese wrestling, and of course, Lucha Libre. If something big happened in the pro wrestling world, we will talk about it. So if you know Spanish or have a friend that knows Spanish or want to practice your Lucha Libre pronunciations, go listen to the Lucha Jovers podcast right here in the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. Nos vemos por ahí.